Okay, I saw a JJ McCullough post today on Instagram that I wanted to talk about that I found pretty interesting. Um, so here's the post. It's a picture of a 7-Eleven sign with a bunch of mango snacks on it. It has we'll get to what it has in a second. What he says about it is a lot has happened in world history to make this moment possible. At 7-Eleven Canada, if you give me one of these posters, I will make a video deconstructing the rich historic heritage of each thing. Hashtag Mango Mania, hashtag 7-Eleven. Okay, I I'm not joking when I say I love this post. So the picture, the poster outside of the 7-Eleven, um, calling all mango maniacs. Also love that. Love the phrasing there. Um, it's got a Slurpee, it's got a bubble tea, parfait, fruit cup, donut, and a Danish. And I find this genuinely a very interesting post because my first reaction to it was um, like I this is a joke or something. I didn't really look that closely at it. I thought it was just goofy that someone's posting online about a 7-Eleven mango snacks deal. Um, but then I looked at each one of these things. And if you don't know, JJ McCullough is like an online YouTuber who talks a lot about like having a kind of shared understanding of culture and where these things come from, and like an American or Canadian canon of like he does a bunch of different categories. He did like one on chip flavors, one on like Halloween monsters, and kind of the history of how all those things arose. And I think this is a great example of this. This is like if you look at each one of these things, they are kind of broadly accepted these days, but they do have a very like meaningful history, right? Uh, I think the most obvious two would probably be the like mango Slurpee and the bubble tea. Um, just because like bubble tea, at least in America, is it's more of a recent trend, a recent has like more recently been popularized, and the Slurpee is a like 7-Eleven branded beverage. So I think those are the two obvious ones, but each one of these things are like actually they have kind of infinite depth. They have kind of infinite meaning, um, if you want to analyze them in that way. And what I kind of took from that is that like you can do that with literally anything, right? You can take any object and kind of trace back the lineage and the historical like meaning or the design of the thing or the cultural significance. Like that's literally possible with any object, with any idea, with any belief, right? All of it is deeply imbued with meaning from like 12 different dimensions. Um, which is one of these ideas that I keep returning to of just like everything being interrelated to everything else, which uh, it's one of these ideas that is not super hard to articulate. I call these like um, greeting card statements, which are things that are like sound cliche or obvious or kind of banal when said in a simple statement of like everything is connected or love is all you need or these kind of like bland statements, but actually hold like really profound significance if you are willing to accept them and kind of dig into them and try to apply them as a functional framework. I think this is a really good example of one of those of saying like everything comes from interactions with everything else, and you can trace back the senses of anything to different forces that arise from different outputs of different elements, different societal elements in this case, um, which is a an almost useless statement if you leave it at that. If you just say that like everything is a product of culture and contributes to the broader culture, and the culture is self-sustaining in that way. Um, and maybe it is just a truly kind of meaningless idea that like it's such a broad statement that it's almost unapplicable unless you're going case by case. And then I think that things do actually interact to such an extent, to such a kind of like everything is so wildly tied together that if you are trying to apply that as a holistic framework to any given object, like if you're trying to trace back the cultural significance of a mango Slurpee, you will have a breakdown and could study it for your entire lifetime without like making a full dent in it, right? And I think that's it's this kind of there's an issue that arises here and in similar kind of all-encompassing frameworks where you actually take too far of a step back, and at that point you it's almost meaningless. Like you're if you're looking at the entire universe, then you cannot focus on any one of the planets, right? You're taking too broad a view of a thing, um, so it's almost unapplicable. And in this case, you are saying that like the mango Slurpee as the object of culture has been created out of like an infinite number of interacting influences that have ultimately come to create this object, right? And that in and of itself is meaningless because a lot of those influences are actually pretty minute, right? Let's say that there's the inventor of the Slurpee was influenced in some like very minor way of like having ice cream melt on his shoe or something. And even that is a little too direct because ice cream and Slurpees are very intertwined in the kind of like frozen snack cultural canon, right? So that's a very direct connection. But it could be something. I mean, I could literally say anything at this point and back it up, and it's hard to articulate just how insignificant seeming some influences are, right? But nevertheless, they're still there. They are still impactful, even if they're not, even if the strength of their impact is relatively small, right? Like, say he was out for a walk on a cold day and saw a dog or something like that, and that has some downstream effect on his day of like increasing his mood and will ultimately lead to the invention of the Slurpee in 7 years, right? Like that's a an insane like in any meaningful framework, completely detached from the invention of the Slurpee, right? But it is still there. And in this way, if you're trying to take this frame and apply it to if you're trying to analyze anything through this frame, it's meaningless because it is too broad, because it is too, it doesn't have boundaries. And that's the like kind of importance of applying boundaries to yourself, right? Is that you need some guide rails so that you can be on like a shared level with other human beings, right? Uh, and I mean, I don't know. I see a lot of like esoteric discussions online of like people just like accepting the plainest version of like mysticism or esotericism or occultism, just accepting the like one line sentences of everything is connected or uh, uh, I'm kind of blanking right now, but there's a lot of those kind of things where it's everything is made of energy or something like that, or all energy influences other energies, or the the energy that you put out in the world is the energy that you receive. Um, that last one less so because I do think that there's a stronger correlation there. But a lot of these things fall into the kind of like noise realm of being too broad, like almost the opposite of nihilism, where you imbue everything with such a level of importance that you that everything is equally meaningful. And at that point, there's no difference, right? You need some level of difference. You need some hierarchy of meaning to form a coherent framework that you can actually share with other people, right? That's where all of these different things come from. Of like, if you're analyzing history, you're not often going to be also applying a psychoanalytic lens to every soldier on the battlefield, even though that does have an impact on the war, right? And that's kind of why we maintain these different levels of different fields of study, right? So that we can kind of apply boundaries and prevent like leaking in from 7 different angles. Because if you did just tell someone to go study the years between like 1941 and 1945, just go study that, and that is an infinite task, right? That is a uh, no no genealogy could ever get to the bottom of that, right? Like, and I'm using that in a kind of dualistic sense of like, you can never trace back every single impulse, every single trace, every single sense, every single force um, that impacted those years. But also, like in a family tree kind of way of like, you give one family um, this task of chron or we're not even saying or like chronologizing, chronologing. I don't know, but we're not even, because that already is a framework, right? We're just saying analyze, go look at this, go interpret this, um, and that's an infinite task. No matter how much time you have, you cannot analyze all of those variables unless you are looking, unless you are already adopting a materialist framework and then looking at every single atom and tracing every single atom, how it follow every single atom in the world, or maybe in the universe even, I don't know, over the period of the 40s, right? Like, that's an unwinnable task. You will get nothing out of it, and you'll end up with, if you did somehow end up with it, you'd end up with such an anthology that it would be impossible to draw any meaningful conclusions from. And, I kind of, I guess the reason that I'm talking about a lot of this, that I'm thinking about a lot of this, is historically my strain of thought has been very like anti-hierarchical, kind of like top down rather than or like bottom up rather than top down, and kind of uh like kind of a rejection of the need for any kind of separation between these different things, and saying that like, actually, uh accepting all of these things and looking through as many lenses as possible will always render the best result. And applying 6 different frameworks at any given time is going to be more meaningful than applying one. But really, there's a very good reason to apply all of these boundaries, and that's where I'm ending up, is kind of at the importance of separating some of these fields. And certainly you can have intersection, right? I do actually believe that intersection will yield a better result, or a more better, is dependent on what kind of end result you're looking for, I guess. But I do think that applying 2 or more frameworks at a time will generally yield a more specific result, I guess, um, without getting into the weeds of what I mean by that. But but really, for a lot of cases, it is good enough to say like, we'll just look at a psychoanalytic lens of this person, or we'll just take a historic view of this time, and we don't need to get caught up on all of the details, because there are an infinite number of details tracing back to the beginning of the universe, and tracing forward to the beginning of the universe, or to the end of the universe, right? And it's you fall into just complete noise, like anti-nihilism, or I should come up with a term for that, because there is an interesting like horseshoe there between nihilism and the opposite of nihilism, where everything is like profoundly meaningful, and you are filled with a sense of like ultimate euphoria at all hours of the day, right? Just by the beauty of everything. Um, but yeah, I guess I don't have a ton more to say about that. I'll bring back this uh, photo one more time, just because I do love it. I do think that even if you can't instill everything with this level of cultural significance in your day-to-day life, it is kind of wonderful to be able to take a minute out of your day and look at anything and say like, wow, there are an infinite number of influences that converge to form this end product, right? That's truly beautiful. That's truly magnificent that there is so much interaction in our world. Um, yeah, I guess that is all I have to say about that. Um, so I will upload this and I will see you later.